The revolving door of the most expensive building on Reforma turned with a perfect whisper, as if even the glass knew it had to yield to him. Santiago Herrera stepped into the city's warm air, flanked by two assistants and a driver, already holding open the door of a black SUV. Dark blue tailored suit, European watch with no logos, a gaze that didn't ask for space. It took it. He had closed 3 meetings, ignored 2 calls from his ex-wife, and had an interview with Forbes scheduled. The day was going well, until he saw him. On the other side of the crosswalk, right where the shadow of a bridge fell across the cracked sidewalk, there was a man crouched down with a piece of cardboard between his legs. Thin, dark-skinned, weeks of beard, wearing a gray sweater covered in dust. In front of him, a folded sign that read, "I'm hungry, please help." Santiago wouldn't have paid attention if it hadn't been for one thing. That face. For a second, the world paused. The noise of traffic, the hurried footsteps, the birds in the tree no one listened to, all vanished. The man across the street didn't just look like him. He was him, not a coincidence, not a vague resemblance, not an illusion. It was his face, dehydrated, aged, dirty, but unmistakable. A chill ran down his spine under the Italian shirt. He took half a step toward the street. Then he stopped. "Mr. Herrera, the car is ready," said the driver. Santiago looked at the man once more. The man raised his head. His eyes were identical to his own, dark brown, tired, intense. And then the man smiled. Not like a madman would, not like a fan would, like someone who knew him. Santiago swallowed hard. He turned toward the car. "Let's go." The engine started. The SUV glided smoothly down the avenue, leaving behind the man with the sign. Santiago didn't look back. Before we continue, subscribe and leave a like if this story has already hooked you. What would you do if you came across your long-lost twin begging on the street? In the back seat, with tinted windows hiding his face from the world, Santiago stayed silent. His assistants were talking about the investor lunch, but he didn't hear a word. Only one image remained, the eyes of that man. They were his. Younger ones. They were Alejandro's. It had been more than 20 years since the last time he heard that name, or allowed himself to. Alejandro, his brother, his twin, his other half, torn from the world on a day Santiago had buried under thousands of layers of silence and success. "Everything all right, sir?" asked Diego, his assistant, with a tense smile. Santiago nodded. "Yes, just tired." But he knew it wasn't tiredness, it was vertigo. Because if that man was Alejandro, it meant that everything he had built, the image, the control, the prestige, could collapse like a house of cards with a single word: brother. And if it wasn't him, why was his stomach in knots? That night, in his penthouse in Lomas, Santiago drank alone. The view from the 26th floor was perfect, a postcard of lights and silence. Leaning against the glass, he looked again at the photograph. An old photo, hidden at the back of a watchbox where no one else would ever look. In it, 2 identical boys with the same broken smile sat on a sidewalk, one holding an ice cream, the other without. He remembered which one was which. He had always been the one with the ice cream, and Alejandro, the one who only watched. "It can't be," he whispered, but it was. He knew it. The next morning, Santiago didn't go to his office. Almost unthinkable. He requested a report from an old government contact, hired a private investigator, gave precise instructions. "I want to know who that man is, where he came from, where he sleeps, if he has a record, everything. Leave nothing out, but absolute discretion." "Any name?" "He doesn't have one." The investigator asked no further questions. 2 days later, Santiago received a sealed folder with a metal clip. On the cover, Case number R58, Viaducto Street, unidentified subject. Inside, photos, reports, records. Name, Alejandro Herrera Peña. Age, 37. Homeless, prior arrests for petty theft. 1 voluntary psychiatric admission. No registered relatives. Santiago dropped the folder onto the table. The name left no room for doubt. It was him. The wind blew hard that afternoon. From his office on the top floor of Torre Prisma, Santiago watched the clouds shift, as if trying to escape the sun. The folder lay open on his desk, its papers arranged with surgical precision, but inside it was a storm. Alejandro lived, if one could call it living, in a makeshift shelter beneath the Viaducto Bridge. He'd been detained several times for loitering, for sleeping in public, for fights with other vagrants. No major crimes, nothing to justify his condition, nothing to explain why he was there, nothing, except 20 years of silence. Santiago made a decision. He couldn't approach him, not now, not directly. But he could watch, observe, see with his own eyes. That very night, without driver, without bodyguards, wearing an old cap and a cotton sweater over his suit, Santiago parked 2 streets away. He walked. Something he hadn't done since his 20s. It unsettled him. The stones, the smells, the dampness of the city at sidewalk level. All the things his money had kept him away from. From across the avenue, he saw him. Alejandro sat cross-legged, leaning against a concrete column, eating something out of a crumpled plastic bag. His hair was longer than in the photo, streaked with gray. His face thinner, but the expression, it was his. Exactly. Santiago didn't go closer. He watched from the shadow of a closed stand. Alejandro ate slowly, as if every bite demanded its own ceremony. Beside him, an old dog slept with its head on his feet. There was something profoundly unjust about the scene. The man who shared his face was sleeping on the ground, while Santiago clenched his teeth, turned away. He wasn't ready. "I want you to help him," he said the next day to one of his most trusted lawyers. "Who?" "A man living on the street, but he can't know it's me." "Is he in trouble?" "No, but he's lost." He dictated instructions. Find him a place to sleep, hot meals, a medical checkup, clothes. But it all had to look like chance, as if someone else, a nameless benefactor, was helping him out of compassion. And if he asks why, tell him it was luck. In the following days, Alejandro was approached by a kind woman dressed like a social worker. She offered him a few days in a boarding house. He accepted, though with suspicion. In the room, there was a bed with a new mattress, a fan, a bag with clean clothes, and an envelope of cash. "Who sent this?" he asked. "An anonymous donor." Alejandro said nothing more. He only nodded slowly. Santiago watched everything through security cameras he had discreetly installed across from the boarding house. Not out of morbid curiosity, out of fear. Fear of losing control. Fear that his brother wasn't the man he remembered. Fear that the past would return not just as a face, but as a judgment. One day the lawyer suggested giving him a job. Something simple, by the hour, in a subcontracted company that worked for Herrera Group, night cleaning at a warehouse in Tlalnepantla. "Do you think he'll take it? If he doesn't try, we'll know how far gone he is. And if he does, then maybe there's hope." Alejandro accepted. Santiago watched him leave the boarding house in a light blue shirt, an ID badge hanging from his neck, and an old backpack. He walked tall, like someone who didn't need permission to breathe. One camera captured his entry into the staff bus. Another showed him sweeping a warehouse in silence. No complaints, no interaction with anyone. Santiago felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't relief. It wasn't pride. It was something more primal, like watching a ghost decide not to die completely. But the world is small, too small. A local TikToker who made content about people with unique stories posted a video comparing 2 photos, one of Santiago on the cover of a business magazine and another taken on the street of Alejandro begging for help. The video went viral in 2 days. 2 long-lost twins? Or a social experiment? "Why doesn't the millionaire talk about his brother?" Santiago called his press team. "Deny everything, say it's edited, that he's an actor, that it's fake. And if someone digs deeper, then we'll make it disappear." Not Alejandro, the story. Alejandro had no social media, no phone, no idea that his face was going viral, but Santiago did. "I need him gone from the city," he told the lawyer. "A job elsewhere, something discreet, no cameras, no noise. And if he refuses, then we make it attractive, give him a reason to leave, without knowing we're the ones pushing him." 2 days later, Alejandro received an offer. A cleaning company in Veracruz, with housing included, needed night shift workers at an auto parts factory. Better pay, private room, meals covered. "Why me?" he asked, without looking at the woman who gave him the news. "They said someone recommended you, that you've been punctual, quiet, efficient." Alejandro didn't answer. He only thought about the room he now occupied. Comfortable, yes, but foreign, temporary, as if it wasn't his. He accepted. Santiago watched from his screen as his brother boarded the bus. In his backpack, just a few belongings, a spare change of clothes, a folded photo, the same one from when they were children, and a black-covered notebook. The lawyer noticed. "Isn't this what you wanted?" Santiago closed the laptop. "I wanted him not to be near, not to stop existing." In Veracruz, the work was hard but steady. The room was clean, the supervisor asked no questions, and for the first time in years, Alejandro slept more than 6 hours without interruptions. He began to write, random things, memories, fragments. Sometimes he drew. Sometimes he just stared at the wall for hours, trying to piece together how he had ended up there. He had no family, no verifiable past, only a face, and something inside told him that face belonged to someone else too. In Mexico City, the press didn't stop. A journalist from an independent magazine, Diego Navarro, went beyond the algorithm. He dug through DIF archives, old photos, school records. He found names, dates, and he found the photo. 2 children at San Marcos Orphanage, 1989. Santiago and Alejandro Herrera Peña, twins, adopted. Separated by a bureaucratic accident. Only one was claimed, only one rose. Diego prepared a report, title, "The Forgotten Brother of the Richest Man in Mexico." Santiago read it before it was published. His blood boiled. He called his legal team, lawsuits, threats, editorial contacts, but the article was solid, based on real documents. "What do we do?" his assistant asked. Santiago turned, frowning. "We avoid it. We don't confront it." But the story had already reached social media. People commented, shared, debated. A hashtag began to trend. Hermano de Herrera videos, memes, opinions, a homeless man, a millionaire who denied him. The country loved telenovelas, and this one was real. Alejandro in Veracruz came across a copy of the article by chance. A factory worker showed it to him, laughing. "Look, man, you look just like this guy." He took the magazine, examined it carefully. The cover was a montage, but the face was his. Both faces were his. He read the entire article, not once, not twice, 4 times. When he finished, he stayed silent for several minutes. Then he walked to his room, took out the old photo, and placed it next to the magazine. He didn't say a word. He only wrote one sentence in his notebook. "Now I understand everything." 2 days later, Alejandro arrived in Mexico City on a night bus. No one was waiting. No one stopped him. He got off with his backpack and walked to Reforma. There, in front of the glass building where it all began, he stopped. The security guard intercepted him. "Can I help you?" "I want to see Mr. Santiago Herrera." "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Name?" "Alejandro. Tell him. His mirror has come looking for him." The message reached the 22nd floor. Santiago read it without blinking. His heart hardened. "What do we do?" the secretary asked. Santiago stood, walked to the window, looked down at the exact spot where he had first seen him. "Nothing. Tell him to leave." "Are you sure?" Santiago didn't answer. An hour later, the guard returned. The man already left. He left this. An envelope. Inside, a copy of their childhood photo. And a note. "Thank you for the food. Thank you for the roof. But I don't want your shame. I want my brother to look me in the eyes." Santiago put the envelope away without a word, and for the first time in years, something inside him trembled. He didn't sleep that night. Alejandro's letter lay on the dining table next to the photograph he had tried to bury for half a lifetime. The city lights poured in through the windows without permission, as if they too wanted to see what he refused to. "What does he want from me?" he murmured. But he already knew the answer. Not money, not fame, truth. And that was the one thing he couldn't give. The next morning, his face was on the news, on memes, in street polls. Everyone was talking about the story. Some defended him. Maybe he didn't know, they said. Others tore him apart. He abandoned him because he was ashamed. Santiago canceled meetings, turned off his phone. The press camped outside his building. His mother called 3 times. He didn't answer. "Are you going to make a statement?" asked his head of communications. No. And if he talks? Santiago looked at her with empty eyes. He won't. He knows me. Somewhere in the city, Alejandro slept in a room rented by the hour. He didn't want to return to Veracruz. He didn't want to run. He didn't want anything, except a conversation. He kept his belongings in an old backpack. Each day he reread his notebook, as if writing could somehow organize the chaos inside him. One afternoon, he walked again to the same spot, in front of the Herrera Group building. He didn't expect to be let in, but he left something at reception, a second letter. I don't want cameras, I don't want interviews, I just want 1 hour of your time, where it all began, on the roof. Santiago received the note that same night. He read it while drinking whiskey alone. He didn't know why he accepted, maybe guilt, maybe exhaustion, or maybe because deep down, he needed it. He dialed a number. I want you to let someone in tomorrow. No security, no recordings, just him and me. The next day at 9 West p.m., Alejandro rode the elevator of the most powerful building in the country. No one stopped him. No one spoke to him. He carried the same backpack, the same worn clothes, and a calmness that wasn't resignation. It was certainty. The door of the top floor opened. Santiago was waiting by a steel railing. The city lights burned at their feet. He didn't turn when he heard the footsteps. He just spoke. I thought you had left. I thought you had forgotten me. Silence. Alejandro approached slowly, stood at his side. Both of them stared at the same horizon. 2 bodies, 1 blood, 2 destinies, 1 broken story. Why? Alejandro asked. Santiago clenched his jaw. Because I was afraid. Afraid of me? Afraid of me, if I acknowledged you. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was compressed history. Alejandro took off his backpack, pulled out the photo, and placed it between them. You had the ice cream. I had the hunger. It wasn't my fault. No, but it was your choice not to look for me. Santiago looked him in the eyes for the first time, and it was like facing a mirror after years of refusal. I didn't know what to say, what to do. I had so much to lose. And I had already lost everything. The wind blew hard. A page from Alejandro's notebook tore free. Santiago caught it. On it, a drawing. 2 boys in an alley, one smiling, the other with his head down. I drew it years ago. I always knew you were out there. And what if I hadn't wanted to come back? Then I wouldn't blame you, but at least I'd have certainty, not this rotten silence. Santiago lowered his gaze. The words hurt more than any online criticism, more than any headline. I'm not the man they say I am. No, you're worse, because you're human, and you pretended not to be. Alejandro turned. He walked toward the heliport door. Santiago watched him leave. He felt an unknown urgency. He took a step. Wait. Alejandro stopped. What do you want now? An apology? Santiago shook his head. I want you to know that, even if it doesn't seem like it, you matter to me. You always mattered to me. But I didn't know how to handle it. Alejandro looked at him. His eyes weren't resentful, only sad. I don't want to handle anything anymore. I want peace, and you need it too. He left. Santiago was left alone, with the city at his feet, with the echo of what was left unsaid. The city kept beating as if nothing had happened. Buildings lit up and went dark, cars roared at traffic lights, people uploaded stories to their socials. Everything went on, except Santiago. For days his schedule stayed empty. He spoke only to his lawyer. He didn't eat with others. He didn't appear in public. The media no longer hounded him as before, but the internet didn't forgive. Where's the brother? Has he apologized yet? You can't buy the past with millions. The hashtags cooled down, but the damage was permanent, and not external, internal. In another corner of the city, Alejandro went back to work. No cameras, no interviews. Night shifts cleaning at a private hospital. Fixed hours, clean uniform, minimum wage. He didn't need more. He had rejected every offer that came after the scandal. Interviews, reports, even a reality show. He wanted calm, routine, something that didn't depend on a last name he had never asked for. He kept all the letters unopened. He only responded to one, the one that arrived each week from the same sender, SH. Inside, there were no apologies, no promises, just 1 line per letter, fragmented sentences. I thought of you when I looked at the sky. Do you remember the swing at the orphanage? I never learned to tie knots like you did." Alejandro never replied, but he never threw them away. One night, Alejandro received a visit from a young woman at the hospital. She wore a light suit, her hair tied back, and an expression of someone who had rehearsed what she was about to say many times. "Excuse me, are you Alejandro Herrera?" "Yes, can I help you?" She looked at him with a certain tenderness. "No, I came to help you." She handed him an envelope. Inside, a document, a notarized deed of property, a small apartment in the Portales neighborhood, his name listed as the owner. "What is this?" "Santiago signed it yesterday. He said it was the least he could do." "I don't want anything." "It's not a gift. It's closing a cycle, and he doesn't know if you'll accept it, but I had to give it to you." Alejandro looked at the paper. He felt a knot in his stomach. "Tell him thank you, but tell him not to buy silence. He doesn't need to anymore." That same night, Santiago wrote him more than a single line for the first time. "I don't want to clean my image. I don't want to buy your forgiveness. I want to build something, even if it's from the dust. If you ever can, come tomorrow, where it all began." The next day at 6 p.m, Alejandro arrived at the old San Marcos orphanage. It was now a community center. Children ran through the hallways, drawings covered the walls, laughter echoed that didn't match his memories. He was waiting in the courtyard, Santiago, in simple clothes, no security, real dark circles under his eyes. "Thank you for coming." Alejandro observed him in silence. "Why here?" "Because here we were one, before the noise, before the money. Here there were no masks." They walked among rusted benches. "I left you, I know, and every day since then I built a persona so I wouldn't feel it. You didn't leave yourself, you left me, and now what?" Alejandro stopped. He pulled out his notebook, tore out a page, folded it in half, and slipped it into Santiago's pocket. "Read it when you're alone." Santiago nodded. He didn't ask for explanations. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Did you ever hate me?" Alejandro smiled for the first time. "No, but I learned to live without you, and you have to learn to live with me existing." They went in opposite directions, but no longer with the weight of silence, now with the heavier burden, the truth accepted. The paper remained in Santiago's pocket for hours. He didn't read it when leaving the community center. He didn't read it when getting into his car. He didn't read it upon arriving at his penthouse. He just looked at it, felt it, but didn't touch it. Until night fell completely. He sat at his desk, the only light coming from the window that opened onto the vast emptiness of the city. He unfolded the paper. It was a handwritten letter. Black ink, confident strokes, clean. "Santiago, I don't want you to live with guilt. I didn't come to ask you for anything. Not your last name, not your money, not your time. I only came to tell you that, yes, we are still brothers. Even if you closed that door, I always knew you were behind it. I am not your shadow. I am not your mistake. I am your other reflection. And if you ever want to talk without weight, without the past, without a last name, I'll be here, but as a man, not as an internet story." Santiago breathed deeply. He felt his chest open just a little. It wasn't relief, it was space. That week, Santiago canceled an interview with CNN. He declined a dinner with the president. It wasn't a time for speeches. It was a time for silence and action. He contacted the community center, spoke with the directors, made a multi-million-dollar donation, anonymously, with one condition, that the money be used to create a scholarship with a special name, the Alejandro Scholarship. Meanwhile, Alejandro kept cleaning floors. He laughed with security guards. Sometimes he told fake stories about being the millionaire's twin, just to see people's reactions. And when someone said, "You look alike," he answered, "Or maybe he looks like me." He lived in the apartment he never asked for but had learned to call home. He had a plant, a favorite chair, a blue mug that read, "Everything is going to be all right." One night, coming home from work, he found an envelope under the door. No sender. Inside, a folded sheet of paper and a photo. On the paper, a single sentence. "I can't erase what you did for me without knowing it, but I can start learning how to do it with you close." And the photo. It was new, of him and Santiago, together, from behind, in the community center's courtyard, taken by someone from a window, no posing, no ownership. just two men standing in a place of the past. Meanwhile, journalist Diego Navarro published one last piece. It wasn't sensationalist, it wasn't accusatory. It was human, simple, titled The Herrera Brothers, a story without an ending but with a beginning. The article went viral, but without scandal. People shared it with respect, with comments like, "I wish we could all heal like this. Not everything can be bought, but some things can be rebuilt. This reminded me of my brother I haven't spoken to in years." Alejandro read it. Santiago did too. Neither commented, but both knew the story was no longer theirs. It belonged to everyone. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Alejandro heard a familiar voice behind him. "Do you have time for a coffee?" It was Santiago, in a simple shirt, no watch, no bodyguards. Alejandro looked at him, thought for a moment, then nodded. "But I'm paying. I don't want to owe you even the sugar." They laughed, walked together to a neighborhood cafe. Plastic chairs, ceiling fans, and a little girl singing behind the counter. Santiago ordered black coffee, Alejandro with milk. They talked about everything except the past, the weather, the neighbor's dog, a new book nobody understood. When it was time to say goodbye, Santiago said something unexpected. "I want you to meet my children." Alejandro blinked. "Are you sure?" "No, but I want to try to get it right this time." Alejandro gave him a half smile. "Then let's take it slow. First coffee, then Sundays." Santiago extended his hand. Alejandro shook it, a simple gesture, but enough. Weeks passed, no scandals, no headlines, no broken promises, just time, and two men learning to be close without stepping on each other. Santiago and Alejandro began meeting on Sundays, sometimes for breakfast, sometimes just to walk around the city. They didn't talk about who they had been, they talked about who they were now, with awkward silences at first, but ones that became increasingly natural. Santiago introduced Alejandro to his children. They looked at him curiously. One asked, "Why does he look like you?" And Santiago replied, without hesitation, "Because he's my brother." Alejandro didn't react right away. He just nodded, like someone finally hearing what they had always known. The San Marcos Community Center inaugurated a new wing for homeless youth. On the plaque, alongside anonymous foundations logos, one line was engraved, "For those who were forgotten, but never gave up." Alejandro gave a short talk at the opening, not as an expert, not as a victim, just as someone who had once slept on the street and now had his own bed. Sometimes, all it takes to begin is for someone not to look at you with pity, but with respect, he said. Santiago watched from the back of the room. He didn't go up on stage. He didn't greet anyone. He just watched, with something that wasn't pride nor remorse. It was something new. Admiration. A month later, Alejandro received a certified letter. Inside, an updated will. Santiago named him as part of the board of his personal foundation, not because of a last name, because of choice. "Are you crazy?" Alejandro asked when he saw him. "A little. But I want you there, to watch me, to criticize me, to keep me from turning into a statue in a suit." Alejandro laughed. "I can't promise to behave. I don't expect you to." One Saturday night, as they sipped coffee on the terrace of the new community center, Santiago asked, "Will you ever forgive me?" Alejandro looked at him for a long time. "I don't need to. I already know you. That's more important." Silence, wind, distant lights. "And you?" Alejandro asked. "Me what?" "Will you forgive yourself?" Santiago didn't answer. That night, Alejandro opened his notebook. He no longer wrote every day. Only when something was worth it. He wrote one last line. "Sometimes the brother you lost never left. He was just waiting for you to stop running." He closed the notebook, smiled. For the first time, he had nothing more to write. If you made it this far, subscribe and leave a like. This story was based on something that could happen to any of us. What would you do if you found your lost brother and he pretended not to recognize you? Would you forgive him or walk away forever? I'll read you in the comments.